My brother laughed when I said I was moving out. "You'll be back in a week," he said. I just nodded and closed the door. A month later he showed up crying when I didn't say a word when my brother laughed in my face. He had that smug, full-teeth kind of laugh, the kind you can feel in your spine if you've been on the receiving end of it your whole life. I stood in the doorway of his 2-bedroom apartment, a duffel bag slung over my shoulder, and watched him double over. "You'll be back in a week, man. Tops," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "I give it 3 days, actually. But hey, I admire the spirit." I didn't argue. What was the point? Arguing never got me anywhere with him. He was older by 4 years and never let me forget it. To him, I was still the kid who used to wear hand-me-downs, still the one who couldn't keep a job at the bowling alley, still the guy who never got it together. But something was different this time. I didn't flinch. I just nodded, gave him a half-hearted smile, and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need a grand exit. I just closed the door behind me, walked down those 3 flights of stairs in silence, and made a promise in my head. I will never come back. Not like that. Not ever. The first night was rough. I'd scraped together just enough to sublet a tiny room in a basement apartment on the edge of town. The kind of place that smelled like bleach and damp carpet, where the hot water came in bursts, and the ceiling tiles drooped like they were too tired to hold themselves up. But it was mine. I laid out on the lumpy mattress and stared at the exposed pipes running across the ceiling. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Brian, my brother. "Cold yet?" Just that. No punctuation. No question mark. Because he already thought he knew the answer. I turned the screen over and left him on read. What he didn't know was that I'd already landed a job, 2 actually. A dishwashing gig at a diner on 7th Street and graveyard shifts stocking shelves at a 24-hour grocery store. I knew it would burn me out, but it was work. It was independence. And it was the first step away from being Brian's brother, and toward just being me. The trouble came quick. Money vanished faster than I expected: rent, bus fare, security deposit, cheap groceries that somehow still totaled more than I thought they would. I found myself counting quarters for gas station coffee and walking 5 miles when the bus was late. One morning, I woke up to find a leak in the ceiling had soaked my backpack. Half my clothes were damp, and so were the few printed copies of my resume I'd stashed in there. My used car, a rusty '08 Civic I'd bought off Craigslist, started coughing black smoke on the way to work. The mechanic quoted me more than half my savings to fix it. That's when I felt it creeping in. Not fear. Not quite. But that old feeling. The one I'd grown up with. That weight of always being one mistake away from failure. That quiet whisper saying, "He's right, you know. You'll be back." I sat in that Civic, hands on the wheel, smoke curling from the hood, and I thought of turning around. Calling Brian. Maybe not to go back, but to ask for help. I didn't. Instead, I walked the rest of the way to the diner, tied on my apron, and started scrubbing dishes like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. It happened a week and a half in, somewhere between the ache in my knees and the grease under my fingernails. I was clocking out of the diner, hands still wet from rinsing fry baskets, when my phone buzzed again. "Brian. So how's the glamorous new life? Still pretending this isn't a phase?" That one got to me more than I wanted to admit. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled back to a photo I'd taken earlier that day. A receipt. A little gas station receipt, 2 lines, one of them reading, "Balance $1.14. The other reading, "Paid cash." It wasn't much. But it was mine. I stared at that receipt, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called him. He picked up after one ring. Well. That was faster than I thought," he said, voice smug, already rehearsing his. "I told you so." "I didn't call to come back," I said. "Just wanted to say thank you." He paused. "Thank you?" he asked, suspicious. "Yeah," I said. "For laughing when I left. For not taking me seriously. That made it really easy to remember what I'm not going back to. He scoffed. What, now you're gonna tell me you've made it? You got your little room in the basement, and suddenly you're a man? I smiled, but not because it was funny. No, I said. I'm not there yet. But every time you talk to me like that, it reminds me to keep going. So yeah, thanks. There was silence on his end for a moment. Then came the final jab. You're delusional. You were always soft, man. You just don't have it. I hung up before he finished the sentence. And that night, I printed out that receipt. Taped it to the wall of my room. Right above the leaky windowsill, next to the schedule of my shifts and a handwritten budget that barely made the numbers work. That confrontation wasn't loud. But it was everything. It was the exact moment I stopped running from the past and started running towards something else. I still didn't know what that something was. But for the first time, I knew I wasn't going back. The days blurred together after that. I worked from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the diner, walked 3 blocks to the grocery store, then hauled pallets and broke down boxes until midnight. By the time I got home, my legs throbbed and my eyes felt like sandpaper. But every time I unlocked the door to my tiny basement room, I reminded myself, you chose this. That made all the difference. I started tracking everything. Every dollar I earned, every cent I spent. I made a spreadsheet on a borrowed laptop from the community center. Color-coded. Detailed. It was borderline obsessive, but it kept me focused. I cut out everything that wasn't essential. No takeout, no streaming services, no weekend beers. Just bulk rice, canned beans, and a second-hand space heater I found at a flea market because the landlord wasn't in a rush to fix the cold draft snaking through the floorboards. Then, 3 weeks in, something happened. I was restocking shelves at the grocery store when a customer dropped a carton of orange juice. It exploded like a tiny sun at my feet. I dropped to my knees, paper towels in hand, and heard someone behind me say, "You always clean like that?" I looked up. A man in khakis, collared shirt, clipboard in hand. His name tag said, Regional Supervisor. Turns out he'd been watching me. Not in a creepy way, just noticing how I worked. He asked if I'd ever considered applying for a floor manager position. It didn't pay much more, maybe $2 extra an hour, but it came with benefits. A real schedule. A name tag that didn't just say, stock. I said yes. The next morning, I walked to the diner and gave my notice. It felt surreal, quitting the job I'd clung to like a lifeline. But I didn't need 2 jobs anymore. I needed 1 job I could grow in. That weekend, I moved out of the basement. I found a small studio on the other side of town, nothing fancy, but it had light. Real light. A window that caught the morning sun. I bought a used futon, a set of mismatched dishes, and a small coffee table that wobbled on one leg unless you tucked a magazine under it. But again, it was mine. And for the first time, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't just see Brian's little brother. I saw someone who had clawed his way out of a shadow. It was a Friday evening. The kind of quiet that feels earned. I'd just finished reorganizing my tiny bookshelf, 3 thrift store novels, a used job training manual, and a photo of Mom and me from when I was 8, both of us smiling in front of a birthday cake that leaned dangerously to one side. The knock came just as I sat down to eat. 3 short raps. Hesitant. I opened the door and froze. Brian. He looked nothing like the guy who'd laughed me out of his apartment a month ago. His hair was disheveled, hoodie-stained, and he carried a duffel bag that looked familiar, one I'd left behind when I moved out. His eyes were red. For a second, neither of us said a word. Then his voice cracked. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. Slowly. Cautiously. He walked in like someone stepping into a church. Quiet. Careful. Taking it all in. "This your place?" he asked, glancing at the single lamp and the patchy rug. "Yeah." He nodded like he didn't quite believe it. Then sat down without being asked. His shoulders slumped. He looked smaller. Finally, he said it. "Jess left. His girlfriend. 3 years together. The one he always said was the best thing that ever happened to me. Though I'd seen how she looked when he talked over her. She left? I asked, careful not to show too much interest. He nodded. Said she was tired of the games. Tired of me? I stayed quiet. He rubbed his face. And I lost the job last week. Cutbacks, they said. But I know the real reason. I wasn't showing up. Not really. He looked around again. I thought I had it all figured out, man. Thought I was above all this. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I could feel it, the crack in the armor. The beginning of something real. Then came the line I never thought I'd hear. I don't got anywhere else to go. Can I stay here? Just for a while? My chest tightened. I wanted to say no. But I didn't. Because this was the moment I'd replayed in my head 100 times, imagining all the ways I could rub it in. The triumph, the validation. But when it finally came, it didn't feel victorious. It just felt quiet. I nodded. You can sleep on the futon, I said. Shoes off at the door. No mess. No noise past midnight. He looked up at me like he didn't recognize the man setting the rules. And maybe he didn't. The first few days were awkward. Brian didn't say much. He mostly sat on the futon, scrolling through his phone like he was waiting for someone, anyone, to reach out. The guy who used to bark orders and throw insults over morning coffee now asked if it was okay to use the shower. He even asked how long he could run the water. I told him 10 minutes. He nodded. I started noticing things. He folded his blanket every morning. Not perfectly, but he tried. He washed his dishes without being told. He even started sweeping the floor with my bent-handled broom. I never asked him to do any of it, but he did it anyway. That was new. One night, I came home from a late shift and found him sitting at the table with 2 bowls of instant noodles. He looked up, a little embarrassed. Figured you'd be hungry, he mumbled. I sat down across from him. The steam rose between us. He still wouldn't meet my eyes, but something in the air had changed, like we were brothers again, but different this time. Older. Worn in. You been looking for work? I asked. He nodded. A little. I just said, keep at it. Another night, I found him staring at my wall of taped receipts and job schedules. He ran his fingers along one of the papers, the same gas station receipt I'd printed out the night of our phone call. You really did it, he said, almost to himself. I didn't answer. He turned to me, voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. You know I never thought you'd last out here, right? I nodded once. I know. He let out a weak laugh, rubbed the back of his neck. That's probably the worst part. I wasn't just betting against you. I needed you to lose. It made me feel better about not doing anything with my own life. I stared at him. He stared at the floor. It was the first time I'd ever heard my brother admit he was scared. That's when I knew the shift was real. The balance of power had changed, not just in the room, but inside both of us. He wasn't the one holding the mirror anymore. I was. And he didn't like what he saw. But for the first time, he didn't look away. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from work, drenched from walking the last few blocks after the bus broke down. Brian was on the futon, TV off, staring into space. There were dishes in the sink, his dishes, something we'd quietly agreed wouldn't happen. I dropped my keys on the counter a little louder than necessary. He looked up. Rough day? Yeah, I said, kicking off my wet shoes. Long. I'd appreciate it if the place didn't look like a dorm room when I got back. He nodded slowly, but didn't move. Just sat there. You okay? I asked begrudgingly. I don't know, he said. Feels like I'm underwater all the time. Like I wake up already behind. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. That's what happens when you coast for too long. You forget how to swim. His jaw tensed. I didn't coast. You did. He looked at me then, really looked. and I could see the flicker of anger he used to throw around so freely starting to rise. You think you're better than me now? I kept my voice even. No. But I think I finally figured out who I am without you reminding me who I'm not. He stood up. You act like I held you back or something, he said, voice rising. I gave you a place to live when you had nothing. I fed you. Let you crash on my couch for years. You also treated me like furniture. I said, calm but sharp. I was never your brother. I was a fixture. A punchline. A servant who never quite measured up. His face crumpled. That's not true, he said, but it came out hollow. I stepped forward. When I said I was leaving, you laughed in my face. Do you remember that? You didn't say good luck. You didn't say, I hope it works out. You laughed. Like it was ridiculous to think I could be anything on my own. He looked down. I didn't think you'd make it, he said quietly. Because if you could, what did that make me? There it was. The truth. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, it made you someone who wasted a head start. His head snapped up, eyes wide. You had the job, the girlfriend, the apartment. And you lost all of it. Not because of bad luck. Because you never learned what it means to be on the bottom. He sat back down, slower this time. You're right, he whispered. It wasn't an apology yet. But it was close. It was the breaking point. And sometimes, that's all it takes to start something new. It didn't happen right away. After that Tuesday night, Brian kept his distance. Not physically, we still shared the same four walls, but emotionally. He got quiet. Stopped trying to fill the silence with nervous jokes or casual commentary about the weather or the news. He started listening more. Watching. I noticed the changes before he ever said a word. He began cleaning up after himself without being reminded. I came home one night and found the dishes done, the floor swept, and my laundry folded in a neat stack on my bed. The futon was made with hospital corners. It felt like he was trying to make the space smaller for himself, to take up less room, to stop spilling into my life the way he used to. Then he started job hunting. Really job hunting. He printed out resumes, asked me to proofread them. It felt strange, him handing me something and waiting for my approval. I circled a few typos, gave him a nod, and he thanked me like it meant more than it should have. He even got an interview at a warehouse nearby. Said he didn't care if it was temp work. I just need to do something, he told me, eyes tired but focused. I can't keep taking from you. Then, one night it came. The apology. We were sitting across from each other at the kitchen table, eating the cheapest spaghetti we could make with what we had. No music, no TV, just the sound of forks clinking against dollar store plates. I had just finished telling him about a small promotion I'd gotten, extra hours, a bit more pay, a bigger set of responsibilities. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. I glanced up. He wasn't looking at me. Just twirling pasta like it might tell him what to say next. Then he set the fork down. Listen, he said. There's something I need to say. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just waited. I was awful to you, he began. For years. I treated you like you were some failed version of me. And the truth is, I was scared. You were always more decent than I was. More patient. You didn't fight back, and I convinced myself that made you weak. He looked up. But you weren't. You just had more self-control than I ever did. He exhaled, slow. I laughed when you said you were leaving because I didn't think it was possible that you could make it. That's how little I believed in you. And that wasn't about you, it was about me. Because if you could get out, build a life, do all the stuff I never had the guts to try. He shook his head. Then I'd have to admit that I've been hiding. Behind pride. Behind comfort. Behind you. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. Still, I didn't speak. Because sorry is a heavy word. One that deserves space to sit in the air. He kept going. I miss Jess every day. But when she left, she said something that stuck with me. She said I only knew how to love people who made me feel better about myself, and the moment they grew, I punished them for it. He swallowed. That was you. And I punished you for a long time. But I see it now. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the man in front of me. He looked older. Smaller. Not in size, but in weight. Like someone who had finally laid down a burden he'd carried for too long. I didn't give him a speech. Didn't lay into him. That part of me, the part that wanted revenge, had gone quiet. But I did say this. You always made me feel like I was one mistake away from being worthless. That's not something you come back from overnight. But you're here. You're showing up. That matters. His eyes welled up. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said. I nodded. Maybe not. But you're earning it. We sat there for a while. Two brothers at a rickety table, surrounded by hand-me-down furniture and paper-thin walls, finally having the conversation that had been building for a decade. That night, we didn't watch TV. We didn't scroll our phones. We just sat in the silence that came after the storm. And for the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. It started small. Brian set his alarm early and made coffee before I even got out of bed. He left sticky notes by the door. Good luck today. Or, don't forget your lunch. He started jogging in the mornings. Just a mile, then 2. He shaved more often. Tidied his hair. Wore clean shirts to interviews. I watched all this without saying much. But one morning, as he stood by the mirror adjusting a tie someone at the shelter had given him, I caught a glimpse of something strange in his reflection. He looked like me. Not in appearance, but in energy. Focused. Present. Trying. He caught me watching and half smiled. What? I shook my head. Nothing. But in that moment, I realized something. For the first time in our lives, my brother wasn't the one I was chasing. He was following my lead. And I wasn't running from his shadow anymore. I'd stepped out of it, and left the light on behind me. 3 weeks later, Brian found a job. Warehouse clerk. Night shift. Not glamorous, but steady. The day he packed his bag to move into a shared place with a couple guys from work, he stood at the door for a long time. Thanks for giving me a shot, he said. I nodded. You gave it to yourself? He looked down, then back up. I was wrong. About you. About a lot of things. I know. He smiled, just a little. You ever need anything? I raised an eyebrow. Like a couch? We both laughed. Then he left. No big scene. No dramatic hugs. Just a man walking out the door a little straighter than he walked in. I stood there for a while after he was gone. And I realized something. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving yourself right.